Hello everyone. I'm glad to see you on my channel. The story I'm going to tell you today is pure. It is true that all the bad things that happen in life happen for a reason. It is said that we can appreciate the good things, the things when they happen to us. I hope you enjoyed this story. I wish you a pleasant viewing experience. Mom, Georgia and I are getting married, Jack told Diane at dinner. We are. That's wonderful news, son, the woman rejoiced. Have you applied yet? Not yet, but we're going to do it one of these days. And the other news is that you're going to be a grandmother. Oh, Jack, I can't believe I'm going to be a grandmother. Diana brushed away a tear. I'm so happy. Mom, why are you crying? You said yourself. Happiness. I'm crying from happiness, son. Forgive me, I must have given up after my father's death. Or I'm getting old. But I react so keenly to everything now, the good and the bad. Tears are close, as they say about people like me. Mommy, you're not old at all. Don't talk badly about yourself. And I have something else to talk to you about. What's wrong? The woman was worried. She thought she had more than enough news for today. How do you feel about exchanging this apartment? What do you mean? Diana, who was under the strong impression of the news about the imminent birth of her grandson and her son's wedding, didn't quite understand. We can exchange this apartment for two, with an extra payment, of course. You'll get a one-bedroom, and Georgia and I will get a two-bedroom. Where would we get the money for the extra money? The woman changed her face. The idea of sharing the apartment was not to her liking. Well, you have some savings left from your father, replied the son. Wait, Jack, why do we have to split the apartment? After the wedding, you and Georgia can live here. There's plenty of room for everyone, especially when the baby's born. I'll help Georgia take care of the baby. I know how hard it can be for a young mom at first. That's what I thought, Mom. But Georgia's been adamant that she won't live with the beetroot. Oh, I'm sorry, mother-in-law. Mother-in-law. Diana was horrified to hear that. Is that what your Georgia says about me? What does she think I am? Some kind of snake? Have I done something to offend her? No, Mommy, of course not. Jack hastened to reassure his mother, mentally berating himself for saying too much and hurting her. You're the best and kindest mom in the world, but Georgia thinks that mother-in-law and daughter-in-law can have a normal relationship only if they live far away from each other. See, Georgia's mom and her husband divorced because of her difficult relationship with her mother-in-law. She hated her and ate her up. She wouldn't let it go until she divorced her and Georgia's dad. Georgia learned her lesson about living on her own. Why judge people based on one bad experience? I don't know what happened between Georgia's parents. People are different. For instance, I had an amazing mother-in-law, your grandmother Betty. We lived with your father's parents for years, and never once did we have a fight. Betty was a very wise woman. She took pity on me, the dumb one, and treated me like a daughter. I grew up in an orphanage, you know. When David and I met, I didn't even know how to cook. Just pasta and scrambled eggs. Betty taught me everything, and delicious soups, borscht to cook and bake pies and take care of the baby. She helped me so much when you were born. She was like a mother to me. I remember her so fondly. So, son, not all mothers-in-law are mothers-in-law, are mothers-in-law. That's what Georgia says. I understand, Mom. Yeah. Grandma Betty was wonderful. It's a pity she died early. I was only 15. But I can't change Georgia's mind. She's so stubborn. She gets it into her head. She says it's no place for two women in the same kitchen. And I don't want you to fight with her. I wasn't going to quarrel with her. But she is very unfriendly towards me. As I understood from your words, Diana said thoughtfully. Everything her son had said displeased her to the core. No, Mommy, Georgia is fine with you. Don't get any ideas. Is that why she calls me beetroot? Oh, don't mince words. She wasn't talking about you. She was talking about her grandmother, the one who got her parents in a fight. She's a real bitch. She always calls you respectfully by your first name and patronymic. and I wouldn't let her speak ill of you. Thank you for that, son, Diana smiled sadly. Besides, Mom, think about it. Why do you need a 3-bedroom? Jack started talking about the apartment exchange again. It's a lot of extra cleaning. You'll be more comfortable in a 1-room apartment, and Georgia and I will so on have a family, a child, you know. So, Mom, you should think about changing the apartment, okay? Okay, I'll think about it, Diana sighed. All right. Jack got up from the table. Thanks for dinner, Mom. It was delicious, as always. I'm off to George's to help my future mother-in-law put the dresser together. Don't lose me if you need me. Maybe I'll stay there tonight. The son kissed his mother on the cheek and ran away, leaving Diana in complete confusion. For about 10 minutes, the woman sat as if in a stupor, not understanding what was going on. Proposal to exchange the apartment was a complete and extremely unpleasant surprise for her. 3 years ago, Diana was widowed. It was a very difficult ordeal for her. With her husband David, they lived a little more than 30 years, raised a son. The couple lived well, friendly, understood each other with half a word, and for all the years of married life, never once seriously quarreled. There were, of course, disagreements, as with everyone, especially in the early years of life together. But Diana and David loved each other very much, and therefore were able to find compromises and did not allow a small quarrel to grow to a large scale. First time after the death of her husband, Diana thought that for her life is over, she longed for her David. But still the woman found the strength to live on. The only son supported, a close friend, and of course her favorite job. Diana taught math at the technical school and loved her profession and her students. When Jack met Georgia, Diana took the girl very well. Mother never interfered in the life of her adult son, realizing that this can only spoil the relationship with him. But, of course, she was worried about her son because Jack was already 32, and he remained a bachelor and said sometimes that he was not created for family life. And Diana wanted her son to have a family, children. She was worried about his future. And then came Georgia, with whom Jack really fell in love. To be quite honest, it cannot be said that Diana was delighted with Georgia. It wasn't a matter of maternal jealousy. On the contrary, Diana longed for her son to finally marry. But Georgia, something was in this girl repulsive. Intellectual Diana seemed that the chosen one of her son is not too well-mannered and rude. But the woman tried to convince herself that there are no perfect people. Everyone has some flaws. And if her son loved this girl, it means that she should accept it and try. If not love, then at least treat with kindness and respect. A good mother-in-law gains a daughter, and bad mother-in-law loses a son. This once heard the phrase Diana remembered well, and understood that she did not want to lose her son, and therefore will try to do everything in her power to establish good relations with her daughter-in-law. And today, her son shocked her with the news that Georgia, it turns out, calls her a mother-in-law and already in advance set up for conflict relations. Diana was completely incomprehensible. Why? Because she really treated her son's daughter-in-law well. It was unclear to Diana what Georgia had gotten herself into a tizzy and why her son was going along with her. Having recovered a little, Diana cleared the table, turned on the dishwasher, and decided to call her close friend Anfisa, with whom they had been friends since their student days and used to share with each other everything that had come to a boil. "What a mess!" exclaimed Anfisa. "What do you mean?" Georgia is turning Jack against his mother. "I don't think she is." Diana tried to stand up for her son and future daughter-in-law. "In-law, it's just that Georgia doesn't want to live with me, so Jack is offering to split the apartment." "Don't you dare say yes. It's your apartment. Let your son earn his own. And if Georgia doesn't want to live with you, let her live with her mother or rent a place." Why didn't they think of that option if they want to live separately? I don't know, Anfisa. The thing is, Georgia's pregnant. She's going to go on maternity leave soon. My Jack can't afford to pay his salary and rent an apartment and support his family. There are so many expenses with a child. Clothes and diapers. Don't tell me, Diane, that you're ready to trade up. That's just it, I'm not. We've lived in this apartment with David for so many years. It's so dear to me. Every corner is dear. I don't want to move anywhere, but I don't want to move anywhere, but I don't want to quarrel with my son either. Anyway, Anfisa, I don't know what to do. I feel at an impasse. Talk to your son again. You've always had a good relationship with him. I'm sure this girl has Jack in a twist. It was her idea to split the apartment. I wonder why she wouldn't offer that to her mother. Georgia has a little sister, and they live in a 2-bedroom. I see, that's why she wants your place. And Fiza, sooner or later they'll get my apartment anyway. I'm not forever, and I don't want to start a swap at all. Diana was ready to burst into tears from the resentment that came over her. Wait, Diana. Don't get so upset. I can hear your voice is shaking. Try to calm down, or your blood pressure's gonna spike again. Besides, you know that nerves aggravate all diseases, and you've already lost your health since you left. So, my dear, take a sedative and get some rest. Tomorrow you'll talk to your son again. He must realize that it's wrong to solve his problems at his mother's expense. After talking to her friend, Diana calmed down a little. How good it is that she has Anfisa in her life, a faithful and time-tested friend from whom there is no need to hide anything and who will always find the right words to cheer up and calm down. The woman drank sedative drops and went to bed, hoping that the morning, and indeed, according to the proverb, will be wiser than the evening, and she will be able to convince her son that the idea of exchanging the apartment extremely unsuccessful. Diana slept badly that night, constantly waking up. Anxious thoughts did not give her peace, and when she fell asleep again, she was tormented by nightmares. She dreamed about strange men with unpleasant faces taking furniture out of her apartment, and she ran after them and begged them not to do it. And then Georgia appeared from somewhere with a huge belly, laughing nastily and saying, for some reason in a bass voice, "Well, mother-in-law, say goodbye to the apartment." In the morning, Diana woke up completely wrecked. It was good that it was Saturday, and she didn't have to go to the technical school. She loved her job, but today she was glad to be able to stay home. Her head ached after a hard night's work, and her whole body ached as if she had been carrying bags of cement the day before. Anfisa was right. Nerves aggravate all her ailments. Yesterday she was very upset when Jack announced about the exchange of the apartment. Her son wasn't at home, so he'd spent the night at George's and wouldn't be home until the evening. Diana decided that she would talk to him about her unwillingness to exchange the apartment. Jack must understand her feelings. The woman had no doubt that her son was being pressured by his future wife. He would hardly have thought of such a thing himself. To distract herself from unpleasant thoughts, Diana started cleaning the apartment. She liked to put the house in order. This activity always calmed the woman. And now, as she carefully dusted her favorite porcelain figurines, she thought about how much she loved her home and was not ready to give it up for her future daughter-in-law. Whether her son would understand, the last thing Diana wanted was for her and Jack to have a serious disagreement. That would cause a quarrel. After the death of her beloved husband, Jack was the closest and dearest person to her. For his sake, of course, she was ready to do a lot, but everything has its limits. Jack, as the woman supposed, appeared at home only in the evening and looked a little tired. He told his mother that his future mother-in-law suddenly needed to make repairs in the kitchen, and she asked him to help, and he, of course, could not refuse. "Aren't you hungry?" Diana asked her son, certain that the future wife and mother-in-law had fed Jack dinner. But she was wrong. "Very hungry, Mom," the son admitted. "Why didn't the bride feed you?" The woman couldn't resist asking. "I told you that they are repairing the kitchen, not to cook now." "I see," sighed Diana. "Do you want borscht?" "You're asking me." "I will, of course." After her son ate 2 plates of borscht with appetite, the woman decided that it was time to talk to him. "I was thinking yesterday and today about what you suggested, Jack." "You mean the apartment exchange, Mom? Are you okay with that?" "I'm sorry, son, but no," the woman answered calmly and firmly. "That's how Jack said disappointedly. But why? Son, tell me honestly, did your future wife give you the idea of exchanging our apartment? Well, Jack hesitated. We thought about it together. We have to have somewhere to live after we get married. The son's confusion only confirmed his mother's guess that it was Georgia who had talked him into the apartment. Jack, don't get me wrong, Diana said in a soft voice. I'm not old anymore, and I want to live out my life in this apartment. You young people have it easy. If you want, you sell it, you move. But for me, all these moves are already a huge stress. Besides, this apartment is very dear to me. Your father and I earned it together. We sold the little bedroom I got when I got out of the orphanage. We lived with David's parents for a few years, saved up money to buy a new apartment, and did the repairs ourselves. It's a hard one apartment, Jack, and I'm not ready to give it up. Cherish everything here, every nook and cranny, every centimeter. Okay, Mom. But what about me and Georgia and your future grandson? Georgia doesn't have a place to live, you know. It's a small apartment, and her sister lives there too. And Georgia doesn't want to live with you. I don't want to live with her myself, thought Diana, remembering the offensive word beetroot, and she said the following aloud. I've already realized that living here is not an option for you, although I wouldn't mind. Your Georgia's probably right, though. It's better for a young family to live on their own. That leaves us with the option of renting an apartment. It's expensive. We've got expenses coming up, a baby on the way. I understand, and I can help you out with money until the baby's older and Georgia gets a job. But I don't want to trade the apartment. I hear you, Mom, Jack sighed, getting up from the table. I'll try to convince Georgia too. The word stung Diana unpleasantly. Why should Jack be the one to convince Georgia that the apartment swap was a bad idea? He shouldn't have let her dispose of something that didn't belong to her in the first place. The woman caught herself thinking that she liked her future daughter-in-law less and less. She had not yet become a wife, but she was already trying to command and manipulate Jack. And what will happen next? Diana became anxious for her son. What a cheeky girl. And Fiza was indignant when Diana called her the next day to tell her about the conversation with her son. I thought she was the one pushing him. Don't agree to this under any circumstances. There's no telling what Jack's life will be like with that girl. Imagine if they split up and your son comes back to your one bedroom and she keeps that apartment. You'd be a fool to agree to a swap. I'm not going to, Anfisa. And luckily Jack seems to have listened to me. So let Jack put his future wife in her place. She's got a mind to share an apartment she has nothing to do with. I'm sorry, Diane. I'm sorry, Diane, but something tells me this girl's gonna get Jack's blood and yours. I have the same bad feeling, Diana replied. The week passed quietly. Her son never brought up the subject of exchanging the apartment, and Diana was almost at peace, thinking that they would never return to it again. On Friday, Jack told his mother that he and Georgia were going away for the weekend to her aunt's house in the country, and he would not be home until Sunday evening. On Saturday afternoon, having cleaned the apartment and prepared dinner, Diana sat in a comfortable armchair with knitting in her hands. A romantic movie was on TV, and the woman was in the mood for a pleasant pastime. And closer to evening, she was waiting for Anfisa to visit. Friends hadn't seen each other for a long time, and lately they had been communicating only by phone. So they decided to meet at last and have a good time talking to each other. Diana did not suppose who it could be, and Fisa was supposed to come later. The woman hurried into the hallway and looked through the peephole. Standing outside the door was an unfamiliar, very full lady who immediately announced loudly, "This is Martha, your future sister-in-law. Open up." "Hello?" Diana was taken aback as she opened the door and let the woman into the apartment. They had never met Martha, George's mom. Diana had asked her son to introduce them, but Jack waved her off and said that if it came to marriage, he would introduce her. The visit of the future relative surprised Diana very much. "Why are you standing there like a stranger?" Martha smiled broadly. showing her crooked and yellow teeth. Let's get acquainted. We're almost related. Look, I bought some cakes. Run and put the kettle on. All right, come in, said Diana. Oh, let's not shout, okay? We're about the same age and we're about to be related. Of course, I'm not a lady of science like you. I didn't graduate from any institute. I'm as simple as 3 rubles. But I always say what I think. While Diana was making tea, Martha looked around the apartment without asking permission. The woman looked in all the rooms and was impressed. It was a nice apartment, big, and the repairs are expensive, you can tell. The furniture is good. We live in a simpler place. Our apartment is small. The repairs are simple. But now I've decided to renovate the kitchen, my son-in-law is helping me. Good for you. He's a handy man. That's the most important thing in a man? That his hands didn't grow out of his ass? Do you agree with me? I guess so, Diana nodded. Diana didn't like Martha's impudence, but she tried not to show it. She would have to cross paths from time to time, so she had to take Martha as she was. After all people are different. Everyone has their faults. That's how Diana calmed herself, realizing that this was not the kind of family she had dreamed of. Are you going to have lunch? Or just tea? She asked Martha. What are you having for lunch? Martha asked excitedly. Chicken cutlets and vegetable stew. Stewed vegetables. The future sister-in-law frowned slightly. I don't really like that, but all right, go ahead. And more cutlets, too. Diana quickly heated up the cutlets and invited the guest to the table. I have something to say to you, sister-in-law, Martha said in an important tone, eating the cutlets with gusto. Speak, Diana replied, and her inner voice told her that she was about to hear something she probably wouldn't like. And the woman was not mistaken. Since you and I are related, I think I have the right to have this conversation with you, Martha said importantly, putting another patty into her mouth. I am a simple woman, as you know, and I speak what I think. So I'll ask you directly. Diana, why don't you want to exchange the apartment? Diana, why don't you want to exchange the apartment? Not want our children and future grandson to be happy? Diana almost choked when she heard what Martha had said. That's what the future mother-in-law had really come for, not to get acquainted. So the question of the apartment was still open. She was too excited. The daughter-in-law and now her mother are still dreaming of exchanging the apartment. Why are you silent as a fish? Martha asked, taking a bite of cake. I asked you a question. Diana was amazed at the impudence of her future relative and, remembering Georgia, thought that the proverb was right. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. What is there to think about? Martha said excitedly. It's definitely necessary to exchange the living space. What's the use of such a place on your own? And Georgia and your Jack will soon have a family, a baby on the way. And you're suggesting they live in a rented apartment? I can't believe you'd think of something like that. You alone in a fancy apartment, and my daughter and her family in some rented shack. What are they going to rent it for? Your son is not an oligarch. Or are you suggesting my daughter with a baby in her arms works somewhere to pay for a rented apartment? I've already told my son that I can help out with money while George is on maternity leave. And you probably could too, Diana tried to stay calm, even though Martha's insolence and assertiveness were beginning to irritate her more and more. But she didn't want to bring the matter to a serious conflict. After all, this woman was the mother of her future daughter-in-law. The realization of such an imminent prospect made Diana uncomfortable. Oh, no. I don't have any extra money, Martha snorted unhappily. And I'm not going to pay for any rent. You may have millions of dollars to spare. Judging by the renovation of your apartment and the furniture, you're obviously not poor. I'm a penny a penny. I'm not going to discuss my financial situation with anyone. Diana's patience was on the edge. All that I have, my husband and I have gained over the years, worked hard, earned, and I'm ready to help my son and his family. But I'm not going to split the apartment, and Jack and I have discussed it. Oh, that's what you are. Mersa Malka, Martha hesitated, trying to find the right word. Mersa deal. Mercantile, Diana corrected her. Don't get clever with me, Martha almost shouted. I may not be as literate as you. I didn't graduate from an institute, but I care about my children. I'm a real mother, and I'll cut anyone's throat for my child. So you're here to cut my throat? Diana interrupted her angry screams. She wanted more than anything to kick the insolent woman out the door and never cross paths with her again. Diana had already realized that it was useless to prove anything to a woman like her future sister-in-law. She would always bend her line and think she was right. Diana was horrified that her son was about to marry Georgia. How did Jack get himself into this mess? No, I come in peace, Martha said, her tone suddenly changing to a more benevolent one. Diane, you have to exchange the apartment. If you love your son and want what's best for him, you have to. She doesn't owe anything to anyone. Especially not to you, said Anfisa, who suddenly entered the kitchen. Anfisa, Diana exclaimed in surprise, but how happy she was to see her friend. She had come just in time. I'm sorry, Diana. Your door was ajar for some reason. I wanted to ring the bell, but I heard shouting and entered without ringing the bell. So I overheard part of your conversation. Who are you? Marta was staring at Anfisa. First of all, don't poke me, Anfisa answered calmly, although Diana could see from her face that her friend was angry. We haven't had a drink, and it's the first time we've seen each other. And secondly, I am a friend. And as it seemed to me, you came to her house not with kindness. And I'm almost a relative of Olin's. And we're having an important conversation, which is not for other people's ears. Keyword. Almost, Anfisa answered in her calm and confident tone. Jack hasn't married your daughter yet. They're going to have a child soon. So he'll marry her. Diana, why don't you say anything? Why do you let a stranger talk to me like that? Let him get out of here. We haven't finished talking. Diane's patience was wearing thin. Tell you what, Martha, she said. You really should go now. There's nothing more to talk about. I'm not going to share the apartment, and that's my right. You know, Martha glared, you're a bitch, Diane. You're a greedy bitch. You're a bitch, exclaimed Anfisa, who, unlike her friend, knew that people like Martha should be dealt with by their own methods and fought back immediately. I won't leave it like this, Martha shouted, running out of the kitchen. In a few seconds, she came back, grabbed the box of cakes she had brought for tea, and muttered a curse and ran away again, and a short time later, the front door slammed so hard that Diana and Anfisa shuddered. Thank you, Diana said to her friend. It's about time you showed up. Yes, as I felt, we had agreed on 5. And I did all my business today. And I thought, why wait? I'll go to you early. And it turned out to be a good idea. And it turned out to be a good idea. And it was such a scene. Listen, I've heard that insolence is a blessing in disguise. But not to this extent. It's not enough that your future daughter-in-law is working on Jack's apartment, but now my mom has decided to get involved. Anfis, I'm horrified, to be honest, said Diana, and suddenly cried, Diana, what are you doing, my good girl? Anfisa hurried to calm her friend. This bastard is not worth your tears. That's exactly what she is. But my son will marry her daughter. How did my Jack fall in love with that Georgia? She's just like Martha, insolent and ill-mannered. How am I supposed to socialize with them after all this? What if Jack turns his back on me and sides with them? I couldn't bear it. I've lost my husband. My son is the most precious thing I have. Diana covered her face with her hands and shook with sobs. Come on, Diana. Come on. Anfisa hugged her friend. Jack is not like that, especially you have already talked about the apartment, and he agreed with your arguments. I'm sure he has no idea that George's mother has decided to pressure you. Make sure you tell your son about it so he can put his future wife and her mother in their place. It's a terrible nerve to come into your house and demand an exchange. Oh, I don't feel well, Diana clutched her head. Her eyes darkened, and she felt dizzy. Diana? Anfisa was afraid for her friend. Come on, I'll take you to the bedroom. Let's take your blood pressure. You can't be so nervous. How can you not be nervous? Diana sobbed, getting up from the chair supported by her friend. I'm shaking as soon as I imagine that we'll soon be related. What kind of punishment is this? Why? I dreamed so much that Jack would meet a nice girl, start a family, have children. But I never imagined that everything could turn out like this. I'm so afraid of losing my son. Do I really have to give up my apartment? Diane, don't you dare even think about that. It's your apartment, period. You're the only one who can decide what you want to do with it. Now calm down and be quiet so we can take your blood pressure. Diana's blood pressure did spike, but not critically. Anfisa told her to lie down, covered her with a plaid and gave her medicine, and went to the kitchen and put things in order. Then she came back to her friend and sat down next to her on the bed. Anfisochka, Diana said sadly, we wanted to have a good time with you, to talk about this and that. And instead I'm lying here all broken, and you're fiddling with me. Don't worry about it. Do you want me to sleep over tonight? Jack's not coming back till tomorrow anyway. No, you don't have to. Your husband's home. What husband? Don't you know my Steve? He won't mind. I'm just scared to leave you alone. I don't know what's going on. I feel better, Anfisa. Honestly. I'm just very sleepy. Go to sleep, Diana. I'll stay with you, watch TV in the other room. Call me if you need me. Left alone, Diana tried to fall asleep, but sleep didn't come. She kept thinking about what had happened and didn't know what to do next. She was afraid that Georgia and her mother would turn Jack against her. Deep down, she believed that her son wouldn't betray her. She and David couldn't have raised a bad man capable of betraying the people closest to him. But she was still very uneasy. She felt that Jack was becoming more and more under the influence of Georgia and her mother, and it frightened the woman. In front of her eyes, there was an angry Martha, demanding the exchange of the apartment. Such and indeed will tear the throat to achieve their goal. Diana still managed to sleep, and she slept surprisingly soundly and until the morning. And when she woke up, she immediately smelled something delicious. The woman immediately remembered the unpleasant events of the past day and realized that Anfisa had stayed with her until morning. Are you awake, my dear? Rejoiced her friend when Diana entered the kitchen. I'm sorry. I've been doing your housekeeping. I've made toast with cheese, cooked porridge, and your favorite cocoa. Anfisa, thank you, Diana replied, hugging her friend. I don't know what I would have done without you. I would probably go crazy with worry and anxiety. I'm so lucky to have you. We're lucky to have each other, Diane. They say there's no such thing as female friendship. You and I know that's not true. And I'm not gonna let you go crazy, you know that. It's so embarrassing that you had to spend the night at my place. Oh, come on, Diana. It's not inconvenient. Anfisa exclaimed cheerfully. How could I have left you alone last night? And don't worry about it, I slept so well at your place. Really? Much better than at home. Because without snoring. Laughed Anfisa. Come on. Sit down at the table. We'll eat porridge and toast. How are you feeling? Much better. I slept well too. That's wonderful. Sleep is also medicine. And a good night's sleep is even better. Yes, but I still feel uneasy. I can't get that boorish Martha out of my head with her demands for the apartment. Try not to let those thoughts go to your head, Diana. It's a shame for that cheeky girl to think about her. And talk to your son today. Make sure he puts Georgia and her mother in their place. They're too quick to eat someone else's loaf. Anfisa went home, but before she left, she took Diana's blood pressure and made sure that she was feeling fine. While Diana was worried about the conflict with her future mother-in-law, Marta was talking to her youngest daughter and cursing Diana. You fucking intellectual. She's stuck in her apartment and won't give in to the exchange. She's offering Georgia and her family a place to live. Can you imagine, Betty? That's a lot of money to pay in rent, isn't it? And she's offered to let me in on it. Isn't she cheeky? But I hope Georgia won't live here with her husband after the wedding. Betty was worried. I don't want to share a room with you. I can't wait till Georgia gets married and moves out, and I'll finally have my own room. I'm sick of sleeping in your room and my sister's room. You'll have your own room. Don't worry. It's not even an option for Georgia and Jack. So we'll be like herrings in a barrel, and that merchant woman alone in a 3-room palace. Is that fair? No, it isn't, Betty agreed. Mama, what if Jack finds out that Georgia isn't pregnant by him? What are you talking about? Martha's eyes bulged. What do you mean it's not his? Mom, I'm not stupid. Georgia was still dating Victor when she met Jack, and I saw a 2-stripe test in the trash. And then I overheard you two talking. You were telling Georgia that men don't know anything about women's stuff, so you can say the baby was born premature. Now, Betty, Martha was frightened. Forget what you heard. Do you understand? Don't you dare tell anyone. Georgia's having Jack's baby, and everyone must think so. And we're gonna get that intellectual. She's gonna sell the place like a sweetheart. She's gonna sell the place like a sweetheart. She's not going anywhere. Mom, Betty wouldn't calm down. Why did Georgia turn Victor down if she's pregnant with his child? Victor's so handsome. What's wrong with him? Don't you get it? What does she want with that punk? Asked Victor. He lives with his mother in a communal apartment sharing a room. What's George's prospects with him? Perspectives, Mom. Shut up, Martha shouted. You'll be correcting me again. Perspect. I've never been able to pronounce that stupid word correctly, but never mind. It's clear enough that you can't make a meal with Victor, and to give birth to such a man would only breed poverty. And he's as dumb as a donkey. He barely finished 9 grades. He has no job. All he's got going for him is a pretty face. Jack's a different story. He's got a head and hands that don't grow out of his ass. He's done the wallpaper so neatly. He may not be rich, but he's a lot better than Victor. And he's got a place to live, which is important. All that's left is to get his mom. But we can handle that. We've talked our way into more than one. Georgia will have her own apartment. They'll register there with the baby, and then, if the family life doesn't work out, Georgia will get the apartment, and Jack can go back to his mother. And where would he go back to if his mother lives in a 1-bedroom? Well, that's not our concern, daughter. The main thing now is to get married as soon as possible and get an apartment, and then we'll see how the cards fall. Maybe Georgia will be happy with Jack. He's a good man. The main thing is that the deception is not revealed, said Betty thoughtfully. Jack wouldn't raise another man's child. He'd kick Georgia's shameless ass. What are you saying about your sister? Martha was indignant. Am I wrong? Right or wrong, you've got to make your own way in this life, Betty. So don't judge your sister. She deserves better than to live in poverty with Victor. And as for the deception, how will it be discovered? Martha looked at her daughter carefully. You wouldn't betray your sister, would you? Of course not, Mom. How could you think such a thing? You ask a lot of questions, daughter. Don't spoil your sister's life. I know you two don't get along very well, but you understand. If Georgia gets a good job, it'll be better for you and me. You understand? Yeah, I get it, Mom. I get it. I'm not giving up Georgia, but I want her to get married and move out as soon as possible. All right. All day long, Diane was anxious to talk to her son. But she didn't get a chance to talk to Jack because her son didn't come home alone. Mom, hi! Jack shouted from the doorstep. The excited woman hurried into the hallway and was immediately disappointed when she saw Georgia next to her son. Hello, Dee, said the girl. Diana corrected her. Oh, yeah, I forgot. We rarely see each other, grinned Georgia. But if you want, I'll call you Mom after the wedding. No need. It's better to call her by her first name and patronymic. the woman replied calmly, though she was seething inside. Well, as you wish. Mommy, we're so hungry, Jack said, helping Georgia take off her coat. And we didn't come back empty-handed, by the way. Georgina's aunt gave you some goodies. Jack handed his mother a heavy bag, which the woman took to the kitchen. In the bag were 3 dusty litter jars with some obscure, murky preparations and a piece of lard. Diana noticed the rusty lids, indicating that the pickles were old. The lead was not very presentable either, and Diana put it in the freezer, deciding that tomorrow she would take it to the trash, along with the suspicious pickles. What are we having for dinner? Jack asked cheerfully, peering into the pot on the stove. Cabbage stew. Georgia, do you want cabbage stew? With meat, the girl asked. With meat. Then I will. Son, you run the place yourself, Diana said, and I'm going to lie down. I haven't been feeling well since yesterday. What is it, Mom? Worried son. Are you sick? No, don't worry. Diana couldn't bear to be around Georgia, so she preferred to shut herself in her room. She regretted that the conversation with her son would have to be postponed and worried about what would happen next. She liked her future daughter-in-law less and less, and her mother's heart told her that her son would not be happy with this woman. But what could she do? The woman was carrying Jack's child, and it seemed like something to be happy about. A grandson or granddaughter would be born. But Diana wasn't happy at all. In the morning, Diana ran into her son in the kitchen. Jack most often left for work before she did, his workday starting at 8 in the morning, while Diana went to the technical school depending on when she had classes with students. Today, she had to be at work by 10 o'clock, but she had gotten up early on purpose because she wanted to see her son. She had no doubt that Georgia was already awake and on her way to work, but her son's fiancée wasn't in the kitchen. Is Georgia washing her face? Diana asked Jack. No, Mom. She's still asleep. Oh, yeah. What time does she have to be at work? Georgia's taking the afternoon off, and she's going to the women's health clinic. So she's going to stay here and then go home after the doctor. You don't mind, do you? No, I don't mind, Diana answered, although she didn't really like the news that her future daughter-in-law would be alone in her apartment. It wouldn't have bothered her before, but in the light of recent events, she felt a little uneasy, and Jack was aware of her mother's displeasure. Is something wrong, Mom? Asked the son. Tell me honestly, don't you like Georgia? Diana closed the kitchen door tightly and sat down next to her son. Jack, are you aware that George's mother came here on Saturday? Martha. Jack was surprised. No, Georgia didn't tell me anything. But maybe she doesn't know, because we were at her aunt's in the village. Why did she come to see you? To meet her? Not only that, she started demanding. Diana emphasized the word in her voice, that I changed the apartment. And it's very unpleasant for me that practically a stranger is trying to tell me what I should do and has some kind of views on my living space. Mom, I really don't know. Diana could see from her son's face that he was telling the truth. And besides, I already told Georgia there's no apartment swap. I'm already looking for a place to rent, by the way. I found a couple of nice one-bedrooms for a reasonable price. I didn't expect Martha to show up at your place. You two don't even know each other. I wish we didn't know each other anymore. Diana couldn't help it. Mom, but I can't leave Georgia. She's having a baby. And I love her, I guess. You guess? So you're not even sure you love her? Mom, things have moved so fast with her and me, Jack replied after a moment's hesitation. I really like Georgia. She's funny, beautiful, energetic, and yes, I thought I was in love. And then she broke the news about the baby. Well, that was, as they say, a no-brainer. It's not like I'm a scumbag. Or anything. And you've been wanting grandchildren and a family for a long time. Isn't that right? That's right, son. Of course I want you to have a family. A wife to make you as happy as your father and me. But Georgia, well, you said it right. She's expecting a baby, and it's really out of the question. Mom, I'm going to talk to Georgia again. Have her tell her mom not to push you around anymore. You're right. I shouldn't have even brought up the apartment exchange. It's yours and your dad's, even though he's no longer with us. I'll have to earn my own place. We'll rent for now, and then when the baby's older and Georgia goes back to work, we can think about a mortgage. That's what I like, Jack. Now you're talking like a grown man. You realize you're going to get this apartment anyway. You're my only son. But as long as I'm alive, I want to stay in this apartment. Everything here is too precious to me. This is my home. I feel good and safe here. Mommy, I want you to live a long time. I love you very much. Thank you, son. Diana hugged her son. You don't know how important it is for me to hear this. I was so worried that because of this whole situation with the apartment, you and I would quarrel. You're the closest thing I have to family. No, Mom. Why would we fight? Of course we don't. And by the way, if you ever think about taking out a mortgage, I'll help you with the down payment. Okay, Mom. Jack kissed his mother on the cheek. I gotta run off to work. I'll see you tonight. See you tonight, son. Hey, what's Georgia's due date? I noticed yesterday that she's showing a little belly. I'm not sure, Mom, but it's gotta be about 2 months. After talking to her son, Diane felt much better. Jack went to work and the woman decided to bake pancakes so that Georgia would have something to eat for breakfast. Anyway, she and Georgia will have to see each other and communicate it. While the woman was kneading the dough and baking the pancakes, she couldn't stop thinking about her future daughter-in-law's pregnancy. She didn't know exactly when Jack had met Georgia, and she certainly didn't know when they'd become intimate. But if Jack said his fiancée was 3 months pregnant, something didn't add up, of course. Things happen, but Diana thought back to herself. When she'd been expecting Jack, her belly hadn't started to round until she was about 4 months pregnant, and she'd been as thin as Georgia at the time. Georgia's belly was 4 months old now, if not more, but not 2. Either Jack was confused or an unexpected and very unpleasant guess crossed Diana's mind. What if this baby isn't Jack's at all? How many deceived men raise children that aren't their own? Diana decided that if her daughter-in-law woke up before she could leave for work, she would ask her how far along she was and see how she reacted. If she got nervous, something was up. With a stack of lacy pancakes on the table, Georgia entered the kitchen. "Hello, Diana," she said, yawning. "Hello, Georgia," Diana replied, deciding not to correct the girl who had gotten her middle name wrong again. "How did you sleep? How are you feeling?" "Everything is fine, Georgia," without waiting for an invitation. Sat down at the table and took a pancake. "Is there sour cream?" Sure, Diana took sour cream out of the refrigerator and put a bowl in front of her future daughter-in-law. "Thank you," said the girl, eating the pancakes with appetite. First time I had such a toxicosis, I could not eat anything. But now it's good, appetite beastly. "Eat to your heart's content," said Diana, as peacefully as possible. "How far along are you, Georgia?" "My belly is already rounded." It was obvious that this question took Georgia by surprise. She changed her face, stopped chewing and thought for a while, then answered cheerfully, "I'll go to the doctor today and find out." "So you have never been to a gynecologist before you found out about the pregnancy?" Diana was surprised. "Nope." Georgia regained her composure and started another pancake. "What's the hurry? It's not much longer. And the belly is noticeable because I put on weight. It's not from pregnancy, but from the fact that I'm eating like crazy now." "Oh, what delicious pancakes you have, Diana." Didn't care so much what this person called her. The woman had little doubt that Georgia was lying. She knew her due date, and the child was not Jack's. But how to get this insolent girl out? "Georgia, I have to go to work," Diana said. "When you leave, just shut the door." "Don't you have another key?" The girl asked. "Yes, but why do you need a key?" "I don't know if I'll forget something here, or if I'll decide to come back here instead of home." "I like your place." "Jack said you don't want to live with me under the same roof," Diana reminded him. "I don't want to live," Georgia nodded. "But I can come to the house, can't I?" You can, Diana answered, and hurried out of the kitchen. She was not going to give this girl the keys to her apartment and decided that she would call Anfisa in the evening. She really wanted to share her suspicions about Georgia's pregnancy with her friend. When she was alone, Georgia walked around the apartment, was displeased to find her mother-in-law's room locked, and then decided to call her mother. Martha told her daughter in vivid colors about her visit to Diana and how the greedy sister-in-law, with the support of her insolent girlfriend, had literally kicked her out a door. "Well, did you talk to her about the exchange of the apartment?" my mother asked. "I wanted to, but anyway, she started asking me about my pregnancy term, and I was afraid that she suspected something." "Oh, but did you get out of it?" "I think so. But still, Mom, I feel bad. I was thinking maybe I should go back to Victor. After all, he is the father of my baby." "What are you talking about, Georgia? Are you out of your mind? You want to go to Victor's apartment with a potbelly and then raise your baby there? We'll live with us." "Oh, no. Don't even think about that. Even if Jack's mom doesn't agree to the exchange, he'll still get the apartment. That's when it's gonna happen." "Well, Jack's mother is in poor health. He said she's been in poor health since his father died. Her blood pressure's probably skyrocketing. Maybe she won't last much longer." "Mom, what are you talking about?" "I'm just saying. Anyway, daughter, forget about Victor. We don't need this rolling stone. You're gonna marry Jack and that's it. Do you understand me?" "Yes, I understand. I'm just scared. My mother-in-law is starting to suspect something. If she tries to meddle in your relationship with Jack, I'll give her a hard time. You'll give birth to a baby, say it's 7 months old. It happens. Everything will be fine with us, daughter. Don't doubt it." "Okay, Mom," Georgia agreed with her mother. Betty, Georgia's younger sister, had been jealous of her since she was a little girl. First of all, Georgia was good-looking. Her face and figure had not been spoiled by nature, whereas her younger sister had not received such bounty from nature. The girl remembered well one unpleasant conversation she had overheard between her mother and Aunt Leslie. "Oh, Leslie, why did it have to be like this? I have Georgia just like a doll, a beauty so born, hair-thick figure, a sight to behold, but Betty was unlucky. The appearance is an axe chopped, and the figure is not square, and on the head 3 hairs. Why do you say that about your own daughter?" "Her own child is usually the prettiest," Leslie objected. "That's true. I love both Georgia and Betty, but I'm not blind. I can see how different they are. I look at Betty and I wonder if anyone would marry her, with all that she's got. Georgia too sure to have a lot of suitors. Wait, maybe your Betty will grow up and get prettier. It happens that an ugly duckling turns into a beautiful swan." It was probably after this overheard conversation that Betty began to envy her sister and to hold a grudge against her. Georgia was better at school, a good student, while Betty could barely crawl from a D to AC. And it seemed to Betty that her mother liked her older sister better because she was prettier and smarter. Betty never turned into a beautiful swan when she grew up, and no cosmetics could not disguise the rough features of her face, and fashionable things that she wanted to wear only emphasized the shortcomings of the figure. Her envy of her sister grew stronger every time she looked at her chiseled figure in tight pants or a short skirt. And her personal life was not going well. The guys she liked didn't pay attention to her, and if any of the men looked in her direction, it was either someone much older or not Apollo in appearance. And Betty liked good-looking guys, the kind her older sister dated, but they wouldn't even look at Betty. When Georgia started dating Victor, Betty liked the young man very much, and she liked him as a friend. For the first time, she looked at her sister's boyfriend not as a man she'd like to date, but as someone to be friends with. Victor was kind to Betty and even sometimes gave her small gifts. And then suddenly, Georgia gave Victor the runaround and switched to the more promising Jack. When Betty found a used pregnancy test in the bucket, she realized that her sister was expecting a child with Victor, but she was going to marry Jack. Betty wondered what she should do. On the one hand, she wanted her sister to get married and vacate the room. On the other hand, she felt bad for Victor because she knew he loved Georgia and would be glad to hear about the baby. He was the only thing missing, Georgia thought as she approached the clinic. Victor stood on the porch and smiled at her. "Hi," he said. "Hi," the girl replied, intending to walk past. "Wait, Georgia," said the young man, touching her arm. "What do you want?" Georgia yanked her hand away. "Talk. Why did you keep from me that you were expecting a child? Because this baby is not yours." "Okay. Anyway, I'm getting married soon." "Georgia, I love you, and I don't love you," the girl said as she walked briskly into the clinic building. How had he gotten here? How had he known she was pregnant? These thoughts swirled in the girl's head as she waited for her turn to see the doctor. Only her mother, sister Jack, and future mother. Only her mother, sister Jack, and future mother-in-law knew that she was going to the clinic today. The last two could not be taken into account. It turns out that either her mother or Betty had told Victor. Her mother couldn't. She couldn't stand him. That leaves Betty. But why would she do that? Georgia was seething with anger at her little sister, who gave her the right to pry into someone else's life. What was she going to do now? If Victor didn't calm down and Jack eventually found out about the deception. When Georgia left the doctor's office, she saw Jack in the hallway. "I managed to get off work early, so I thought I'd meet you. I want us to look at the apartment I'm going to rent for us." "What kind of apartment?" "It's got everything you need and it's, well, maintained. It's clean. And if there's anything we need, we can buy it. It's a big room, so there's plenty of room for a crib. It's not far, it's only 10 minutes away." "Okay, let's go," Georgia grudgingly agreed. She didn't like the idea of renting. She wanted to live in her own apartment and hoped Jack's mother would agree to the exchange. But she didn't want to argue with her fiancé now. "What did the doctor say?" the young man asked as soon as they left the clinic. "Yes," Georgia replied, startled to find Victor still standing on the porch, waiting for her. Seeing that Georgia was not alone, Victor did not approach her, but glanced at his rival. "Let's go quickly," the girl said, taking Jack under her arm. "Why did you tell Victor about the baby?" Georgia shouted as soon as she got home. "You did it, didn't you? There was no one else." "Yes, I did. The sister wouldn't deny it." "Why? Who gave you the right to meddle in my life?" "Sorry, I couldn't resist. Yesterday I met Victor on the street. We got to talking. He asked about you. So I told him the truth, that you're expecting a baby and you're getting married. And Victor guessed that you were pregnant by him. He's not as dumb as you and Mom say he is." "What's going on here?" Marta shouted, rushing into the kitchen with heavy bags. "I can hear you yelling in the entryway." "Mom," she told Victor everything. "Told him what?" What? "About the baby. He was waiting for me outside the hospital today." "Oh, for fuck's sake." Martha fell on the stool. "Betty, are you crazy? You gave me your word that you wouldn't tell, that you wouldn't betray your sister." "I just feel sorry for Victor. He's a good man. He treats me like that." "Then you should marry Victor yourself, if you like him so much." Georgia screamed. "He loves you," answered Betty, and left the kitchen. "What are we going to do now, Mom?" Georgia asked. "What if Victor doesn't let up? If he tells Jack everything?" The mother-in-law was starting to realize the baby wasn't her son's. "Mom, I had an ultrasound today, and they gave me an exact due date. So if I stay with Jack, I'm gonna have to say the baby was born 6 months old." "Oh, honey, I don't know." Martha's heart was racing. "Oh, I'm feeling a little sick. Give me a glass of water." Georgia poured water for her mother and handed her a glass. Martha drank it down greedily, then set the empty glass on the table with a clatter. "I guess we'll never get an apartment." "That's Betty, you snake. You're good too. I should have had an abortion while the term was still small. How can we pass off Victor's child as Jack's child if the terms don't match?" If Jack can be fooled, his mother will understand everything. Why didn't you have an abortion, you fool, while the term allowed? Mom, what abortion? What are you saying? What am I saying? I thought I had at least one daughter who was smart like me. And you're just as stupid as Betty. You're both stupid like your daddy. You had to get pregnant by a poor bastard. Now go and live in his communal flat, you brainless fool. I'll go. It's better than with you, screamed Georgia, grabbed her bag and ran out of the apartment. At the entrance, Victor was waiting for her with a bouquet. You're so stubborn, said the girl. She had already made up her mind. Anfisa, I have good news, Diana called her friend. What is it? Jack came to his senses and decided not to marry Georgia, guessed her friend. That's right. Georgia confessed to him that she wasn't pregnant with his child, so she went back to the father of her child. And how is Jack? Upset? You know, not really. I actually think he's relieved too. He's not happy that Georgia lied to him for so long, but it's better that the lies are out now than later when they're married. I'm so happy for you, Diana. God has taken you away from that insolent and deceitful family. That's true, but they got on my nerves. 6 months later, Jack met a nice girl. She worked as a nurse at the clinic and came to Diana's house to give her injections. Between Catherine and Jack flashed sympathy, and they began to meet, and Diana very much hopes that this time her son will do well. Modest and kind, Catherine likes her very much, and about Georgia and her mother, the woman tries not to remember. It was and was. Well, that remained in the past. Georgia quarreled with her mother, resenting her for calling her a fool and regretting that her daughter did not get rid of the child. The young woman lives with Victor and her young son in a communal apartment. Victor's mother managed to get a room in the dormitory at work, where she moved in order not to interfere with the young family. Victor turned out to be a caring husband and a good father. He actually loves Georgia very much and is crazy about his little son. Whether Georgia is happy with him is hard to say, but when she watches Victor fussing with the baby, she begins to realize that she did the right thing by going back to him. And now she regrets only one thing, that she listened too much to her mother's opinion. Her sister Georgia forgave her, and they sometimes communicate. Betty comes to her sister and Victor to babysit her nephew. Her envy for Georgia is almost gone. And in addition, the girl has a young man, and she hopes for a soon family happiness. But with the mother of both sisters' relations are spoiled. Betty and Martha almost do not talk, despite the fact that they live under the same roof. Martha can't forgive her daughters for failing to get Diana's apartment and believes that she has brought up ungrateful and stupid girls. Thank you for watching this video to the end. Subscribe to the channel. Like it, write comments if you like the story, and see you on the channel.